You've almost certainly walked past one of its stores. Your grandparents may have bought their tools, their clothes, even their actual house from it, delivered by mail in a box. For 100 years, this company wasn't just part of America. In a way, it was America. So how did it die? The answer you've been given, Amazon, is a lie. Because the man who ran it in the end wasn't just a failed boss. He was at the same time its chief executive, its landlord, and its single biggest lender. And by the time the company collapsed, lawsuits would allege he had quietly moved its most valuable pieces out of reach into companies he controlled. This is the story of how a 130-year-old American giant was taken apart from the inside while it was still breathing. This is the file on Sears. But to understand the crime, you have to understand what was stolen. Because what this company built is almost impossible to believe today. It began with a crate of watches nobody wanted. In 1886, a young railroad station agent in Minnesota named Richard Sears took a refused shipment of watches, sold them at a profit, and glimpsed the future. He partnered with a watchmaker named Alva Roebuck, and in 1893, they gave their company a name that would outlive them both: Sears, Roebuck and Company. Within 30 years, it would be selling Americans their entire lives, including quite literally their houses. Their weapon was a book, the Sears catalog, the consumer's guide, known to millions simply as the Big Book. Hundreds of pages, thousands of products mailed to every farmhouse in America. For a family miles from the nearest town, this catalog was the entire world of goods delivered to the mailbox. It was, a century before Jeff Bezos, the everything store. And I mean everything. From the Sears catalog, you could order clothes, tools, and toys, but also guns, tombstones, automobiles, and here's the one people never believe: an entire house. Between 1908 and 1940, Sears sold more than 70,000 mail-order kit homes, shipped by rail in thousands of numbered pieces hammered together on the prairie. Many of them are still standing today. You could quite literally order the American dream and build it yourself. And for some Americans, that book meant something far greater than convenience. Under Jim Crow, a black family in the rural South was often forced to shop at a single white-owned store, made to wait until every white customer was served, given worse goods and rationed credit. The Sears catalog quietly shattered that. By mail, they could buy the same products at the same prices as anyone else, with no one watching. Historians call it a small crack in the wall of segregation. Freedom delivered by post. By its peak, Sears was almost beyond comprehension. In 1969, its sales equaled roughly 1% of the entire American economy. 2 out of every 3 Americans shopped there every few months. Half of all U.S. households carried a Sears credit card. It owned Allstate, it launched the Discover card, and in 1973, it raised the tallest building on Earth, the Sears Tower, into the Chicago sky. This was not a store. This was an empire. So how does an empire like that end up dead? Here's what almost no one tells you. The wound came from Sears' own hand, long before any villain arrived. By around 1990, a discounter from Arkansas, Walmart, had quietly passed it to become America's biggest retailer. Sears was slipping. And then in 1993, it made a decision so ironic, it's almost hard to believe. It killed the catalog. The Big Book, the mail order machine that had built the entire company, was shut down. And the timing is the cruelest part. Sears dismantled its direct-to-your-door delivery network in 1993, 1 year before a startup called Amazon opened its doors and began building the exact same thing from scratch. The company that could have been Amazon burned the blueprint, and then watched Amazon get rich on it. So by the 2000s, Sears was a wounded giant, huge, iconic, but bleeding. And that is exactly the kind of company that attracts a certain kind of man. Not a shopkeeper who wants to save it, a financier who looks at a struggling 100-year-old institution and sees something else entirely: assets. Underpriced, unlocked, and waiting. His name is Eddie Lampert, a brilliant, reclusive hedge fund manager who ran his firm, ESL, and who was often compared to a young Warren Buffett. In 2003, he took control of the failing Kmart, and in 2005, he merged Kmart with Sears in a deal worth around $11 billion, becoming chairman of the new company, and later, in 2013, as chief executive. He was not a retailer, he was a believer, and he believed in one idea above all others. Eddie Lampert was a devoted admirer of the writer Ayn Rand and her faith in the raw, competitive free market. And he decided to do something almost no one had ever tried. He would run that free market inside his own company. He split Sears into some 30, later closer to 40, separate business units: appliances, tools, apparel, marketing, even human resources. Each with its own president, its own budget, its own profit and loss. And he ordered them to compete against each other. It went exactly as badly as you might imagine. Instead of one company, Sears became a civil war. According to dozens of former executives, the units hoarded information and refused to help each other. Managers reportedly brought laptops with privacy screens into meetings, so their own colleagues couldn't see their numbers. And in the most telling story of all, the appliance division, chasing its own profit, is said to have handed prime floor space to Samsung over Sears' own in-house Kenmore brand. The store had begun quite literally competing against itself. And all the while, the man who designed this experiment ran it from a distance, reportedly appearing to his 350,000 employee empire, mostly by video link, from his estate in Florida. The losses were staggering. By some counts, more than $10 billion over the following years. But here's the thing you need to understand, and the reason the simple story is so wrong. The losses weren't the crime. For the man at the top, they may not even have been a problem. Now stop for a second and put yourself inside one of those stores in those years. The shelves thinning, the staff cut to the bone, the company your family trusted for generations, visibly rotting around you. You'd assume the man in charge was simply failing. But what if the collapse of the store and the fortune of the man running it were quietly pulling in opposite directions? Because in 2015, Sears did something strange. It carved off 235 of its most valuable stores and pieces of real estate and sold them for around $2.7 billion into a brand new company called Seritage. And Seritage then leased those very stores back to Sears. From that day on, Sears paid rent to occupy the buildings it used to own. And who controlled Seritage? Eddie Lampert was its chairman, and his hedge fund owned a large stake in it. So consider where he now stood. He was Sears' chief executive. He was, through Seritage, Sears' landlord. And through years of loans from his own fund, much of it secured against Sears real estate, he was also Sears' single largest lender. 3 hats, one man, on every side of the table at once. And that last hat matters most, because a lender secured against the real estate sits near the front of the line to be repaid, which meant that whether Sears lived or whether Sears died, the man at the very top was, in large part, protected. His downside was covered. The employees was not. When Sears finally fell, the accusations came. In 2019, the company's own bankruptcy estate sued Lampert, his fund, and others, including the former Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, once a Sears director. The lawsuit alleged that Lampert had moved more than $2 billion in the company's crown jewel assets, its best real estate, its lands and brand, beyond the reach of the creditors and workers Sears owed. The word used again and again was stripping. But, and this matters, those are allegations, not proven facts. Eddie Lampert has always denied any wrongdoing. He insists every deal was fair, approved by Sears' own board, and that he personally poured billions into trying to keep the company alive. "I did everything I could think of," he once said, "to try to make this company great again, because I care deeply about it." And in 2022, the lawsuit ended not with a verdict, but with a settlement, around $175 million, paid with no admission of wrongdoing. The accusation quietly went away. What is not in dispute is how it ended. On October 15, 2018, Sears filed for bankruptcy. The empire that had once employed around 350,000 Americans was down to 68,000. The stock that had traded above $100 was worth pennies. The everything store had nothing left. And then came the final, strangest act of all. When Sears remains were auctioned off out of bankruptcy, the winning bidder, who paid around $5.2 billion for the surviving stores, was Eddie Lampert's own hedge fund. The same man who had presided over the company's long collapse now bought its corpse and kept a skeleton of Sears barely breathing under a new name. He was there at the peak of the fall, and he was there to buy what was left of the body. So let's be fair, because the truth is more uncomfortable than a simple villain story. Sears was already dying before Eddie Lampert ever arrived. Walmart had passed it. It had killed its own catalog. He did not murder a healthy company. But what he did to a wounded one, the experiment that set it at war with itself, the deals that made him its landlord and its lender, the fortune that may have been protected as the workers' futures were not. That is the darker story the Amazon killed Sears headline lets everyone conveniently forget. And it leaves us with an uncomfortable question. We're told empires die because a better competitor comes along. But sometimes an empire isn't beaten at all. Sometimes it's simply worth more dead than alive to the very people who were supposed to be saving it. So here's what I want to know from you. If you had been handed Sears, a wounded giant, but still standing, still trusted by millions, could you have saved it? Or was it already worth too much in pieces to survive? Tell us in the comments. We read them. That's The File on Sears, the book that mailed freedom to people who had none. The store that was, for 100 years, America itself. Taken apart, quietly from the inside. Every empire leaves a file, and the biggest ones don't get beaten. They get sold for parts. This was file number 6. If you want to see which empire we open next, subscribe. Because the brighter it shines, the darker the story underneath. Every empire leaves a file.